Well, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Secretary David Brinkley. That's the first time I've had to say that, and it's kind of presented a budget which flattens the trajectory of increased spending, and this will give us time to evaluate all programs and areas of the state for further cost savings in a responsible manner. This has been done while providing record financial support from the state to counties for K-12 education. The governor, in this budget as presented to the legislature, has eliminated the structural deficit as directed by the Spending Affordability Committee at its meeting just 37 days ago. Legislative decisions can change this. We hope not, and we will work with legislative leaders to ensure that it doesn't. Two very real challenges are paying for the debt service that is accumulated. Remember, the governor mentioned this, but in 2017, were we to continue on that trajectory, the debt service payments from the general fund would surpass monies recommended by the COP Commission and this budget for public school construction in the state. And funding for the state's ongoing pension obligation, which state employees are obviously very concerned about. A financial promise was made to state workers and retirees, and this governor is committed to fulfilling those promises made. The governor and I look forward to working with Senate and House leadership, the committee chairman and subcommittee chairman, and the individual members of the General Assembly to pass a social and fiscally sound budget. That's all I have in my formal remarks. We have great staff. I don't know if you want to add anything to it, but
you're doing just fine.
We also have our staff here to help out with some of the details that we might certainly are going to get into. Yep.
Harry Brinkley, if you would, you mentioned healthcare, the funding for Prince George's County's hospital.
There is money inside the capital budget to the tune of $30 million for the Prince George's County Hospital.
Secretary Brinkley, the governor had said this budget was balanced without any shell games or gimmicks. Previous budgets have been balanced with diversions of special funds, trust fund, open space, state trust fund, any of that
Obviously there's been no movement of anything from the Transportation Trust Fund over. There have been slight adjustments based on some reevaluations that we've had in some of those, but anything along those lines, in other words, I'm not prepared to say absolutely none, but we certainly have been very aggressive about going after anything. Mark, can you add to that? Or?
That's correct. There's very limited transfers.
We've held the line where we can on that, particularly within a 24-hour period. And the other challenge that I want to acknowledge to the transition team that was working on this budget for, I guess, close to 8 weeks at this point in time, was we really didn't know how the current budget was going to finish up. And so some of our challenges, we had menus presented from, frankly, the current or the former budget secretary as to what they might be even considering. And so we had to make sure on some of our underlying assumptions that the current balance, or the current budget balanced, before we could move forward with everything else that we were moving forward to. So we made the policy decision on that to hold the line where we could, and if anything, it's infinitesimal. And that'll stop pretty shortly.
The amount from the GCEI that's been adjusted?
Wait a minute, right here.
I had the same question for Prince George's County, GCEI.
Okay. The formulas on the GCI that we looked at, the education formulas we looked at, we chose the option that had the least impact overall through the state, but still dealt with they will see some money from GCEI. They'll see a 50% of what was anticipated on the GCEI. Why? Because, you know, the legislature, the previous administration, and the administration before that proved that it wasn't absolutely required. But we still found other areas to get that money to record spending, rather I should say record investment in education, and that's the challenge that we face.
The 50% on GCEI, does that apply to the other 12 counties besides itself?
GCEI is a formula, is an item in there, and then it's allocated out, so it applies equally in that regard. So, yeah.
I have two questions on transportation.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is there money allocated to meet WMATA's requests for increased operating and capital spending, number one? And number two, what factors will determine whether or not you go ahead with the purple line and red line?
let's deal with the first part first, Mark.
So the request for spending for WMATA is under review.
Mhm.
It's part of
If
the
I'm not
overall-
mistaken, that recently came in, is that correct? So it's a relatively recent item to what we're dealing with.
Excuse me, is that operations or capital?
What would be the
And
value
purple
of
line
it?
and red lines.
Oh,
The other question was, what factors will determine whether you go ahead with the purple line and red line?
well, again, as we further evaluate the projects, again, with 24 hours coming in and certainly getting pushed by all sides on moving forward with different things, we're in consultation with the communities, and the governor will move forward with that. He's reaching out to some other people that are transportation experts that'll give him some input on exactly where and how we should deal with those projects. But I think the key point for you to take home is that the monies for that have been bookmarked. They have been saved within the capital project and capital program to move forward, so.
What would be the value of the tax cuts?
Mr. Brinkley and Mr. Neal, the governor has talked about this idea that we need to change all the mandates that this budget has. And will you be recommending to the governor either executive actions to change those mandates, or do you want to do it legislatively?
Well, I think the challenge, and if you want to chime in on this, that typically what's happened is the budget's introduced, which is what, we're here to talk about. There's another accompanying bill, which you're familiar with since you cover the legislature for years, which is the Budget Reconciliation Act. And in the past, it's had some significant policy decisions attached to it. Same thing, that we're dealing with here. And typically, that what we refer to as the BRFA has been to close out the current budget based on, once we saw some of the numbers as they were coming in. So that's some of the challenges where we find that we're having some opportunity in moving forward with some of the policy changes. That deals with the formulas when it comes, for instance, to higher education. Salinger formula when it comes to the non-public universities and all. Community college formulas and all those. Those things have continually moved up, ramped up, and have been, frankly, one of the driving features in what we're dealing with. And that's not to say that they're bad, but it's to say that right now they're unmanageable, and that's what we're trying to get a grip on. Dave?
Secretary, the governor, you also mentioned a couple of ways to get control of spending, 2% reduction across the board in state agencies, 50% reduction in the GCI. What other elements were done to put this budget, to make this budget balanced? Those two alone, and even limited transfers, isn't going to do the trick.
Yeah. We had to look at the whole broad spectrum. And as we looked at some of the menu of choices, some of those menu of choices came through, were adopted by the Board of Public Works at its last meeting. For instance, on some of the rate provider, the rates that we had on that, there was a reduction taken on that. We extended some of those. At the Board of Public Works, the 2% reduction that was applied to all agencies, which frankly has to apply to them within a 5-month window, we're going to have that included in this budget. But the incoming secretaries will at least have a 12-month window to deal with those type of across the board. Our concern and our expectation with that, and we're going to be briefing the secretaries a little later today, the expectation is once they get in place, once they have some of their personnel in place and all, we want them to have discretion as to where they can make some of the adjustments without affecting services to the citizens. And we believe that those people on the ground there will have the best input on that, so.
The governor said agencies must be consolidated.
Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, last week, Governor O'Malley came out with a list of recommendations that he forwarded to the transition team for the budget. One of them was to delay the elimination of the estate tax. Was that recommendation taken?
Well, I think he, pardon?
We never got it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I received an email that said, did you receive this? And I didn't receive it, and so I don't think anybody really actually received it. Maybe it's out there somewhere, but
No, sir, I did not.
I didn't see it, so maybe somebody did, but I didn't see it, so. Yes, ma'am.
The governor stated that agencies must be consolidated.
Ideas might merely come from the idea of trying to do some cost savings, at the same time delivering services in an efficient manner. But I personally, at this point, am not aware of any that are on the horizon, but I think that certainly is something in the menu that we can take a look at. Yes, sir.
What made you decide to increase the university system funding, and how did you find the money to do that?
Well, you want to go into the formulas that we had on that?
Sure. Well, I think on higher education, we have received requests, and we are able to provide. We are able to provide 1.3.
Mark, come on up here.
Mark.
Come on up here. Yeah, there you go.
Mark Nicole, I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Budget Analysis. We are able in this budget to provide a 1.3% increase for higher education. That is equivalent to roughly $15 million. Overall, the budget does grow a little bit, so there are some ups and downs, and that was one of the priority areas of spending for Governor Hogan.
Does this mean no tuition increase projected at the University of Maryland system?
I'm sure the regents will try to evaluate exactly what they are working with. This will be their first rollout of this too, and as a semi-autonomous group, we'll let them see what they need to do. I can't rule it out. I can't rule it in. So.
Secretary Brinkley, if I could follow up on Montgomery and Prince George's looking at this GCI, GCEI. What are you saying to them? Is their allocation reduced by 50%, cut in half?
Well, let's keep in mind also the GCEI does not apply just to Montgomery Prince George's. It also applies to my home county in Frederick. So there are a lot of different jurisdictions on that. But those of you who might have been around when the Thornton bill was passed in, I think it was 1990, was it 94, 92? 2002, I'm sorry. You remember, the GCEI portion was optional. The bill as introduced and moved forward was to address a potential court case, not a potential, an actual court case. And it came out of the Senate, moved to the House. When it came out of the House, all of a sudden it had this extra money attached to it. And there's a recognition that those, I guess, more urban areas, there is a higher cost to it. But previous administrations have acknowledged that that's optional. And what we were trying to do as we dealt with the menu of issues here was to try to minimize any type of impact across the board while at the same time making sure we could provide money and investment in school construction and making sure that we could continue that commitment in out years. And this was deemed to be one of the best options that we could deal with it. Again, the legislature gets their fingerprints on this over the point in time too. So I'm trying to bounce it around. The school construction aspect would be on the capital side. And one of the key things while we're just touching base on that, and this was one of Senator Neal's, ideas, was let's try to reintroduce a different spectrum on this, that we don't borrow everything when it comes to school construction, because that is on the capital side. So there is a portion, $30 million of this, is pay-go money, and for those of you new to it, it's pay-as-you-go. So basically, money in the cash portion of the budget to go into school construction so that we're not borrowing 100% of it. Ideally, we'd like to see that get to the 60%, 70% side on the borrowing side and have cash be a part of it.
Tim, just to be clear, I don't want you to leave. It was not a record number for school construction. I think in the glory days, Marvin Mandel did $1 billion a year, and that was in 1972 and 73, when $1 billion was really $1 billion. The record amount involves the aid to education formula, the $6.1 billion. That is the highest in history.
Mr. Secretary, I know you got a lot of budget wonks in here, and everybody's very familiar with this, but a lot of people who are going to watch this tonight are not familiar with how the budgets are made here in Nashville. So could you explain how much of this do you own, and how much of it do you have to deal with behind?
Well, part of what there's a couple parts to that answer. Number one, this chart on the end points to you what the governor was referencing, that we have 20% or 19% access on what we can really affect by policy. A lot of the other is pass-through money that goes into some programs that we don't have any type of change to. What was the second part of the question there? That
how much of this is yours? How much is it that you're dealing with what's left to you?
Oh, I see. So the other part of the question was how much is left over from prior administrations, and the answer is 100%. We have a 15-year bond term on the bonds that the state issues, and so they go back that far. But the fact is, the example that I've given to a lot of people before is we had dedicated money to purchase new helicopters. We're very proud of our helicopter fleet and the efficiencies that they deliver in providing services and getting people to emergency care. We paid for that by a license tag fee. It went into a cash account. That money had been harvested in previous years to pay the general fund bills, and then the helicopters were borrowed again. Bonds were sold to pay for the helicopters, so we paid for them twice. That's the magnitude of the problem we have. It's the same thing as if somebody had a Christmas fund, stuck money aside in the Christmas fund, took all the cash to pay for the bills in November, and then put Christmas on the credit card. We're taking care of the credit card debt. We're not going to expand it any further, and if anything, we're going to stop that trajectory and get this thing under control. Is that it?